Um, I'm sorry, you didn't hear me, only saw my face. So I just want to give thanks to Ojasvini for hosting us, and I'm happy that there are already 12 participants, including myself. So this is the number of the apostles of Jesus Christ, but I think the number will increase, and it is already increasing before my eyes. And today's topic is stoicism. I will just write it in chat. Stoicism. Well, Stoicism is an interesting philosophical school and is relevant for our subject, history and philosophy and methodology of science, because Stoics produced this idea of fate, from which came the idea of natural law, so the idea of necessity. You know that every law, say Newtonian law of gravity, acts with necessity. So this necessary and inescapable influence or action of the physical law is has a philosophical sort of connotation. So I'm sorry. Continuing with Stoicism. What is stoa? Stoa. It's interesting that originally it's part of architecture design. It's like a corridor with columns. Well, on one side or on both sides of it. So, and so corridor with a roof and with columns. So it is partly, we can say, open space. So because Athens, most of the year, the weather is fine in Athens and it's hot in summer. So they needed fresh air, but they also needed protection from rain. So this roof was protecting people from rain. Columns were just decorating and also holding the roof. And fresh air was needed for the comfort of those who just walked to and fro in this stoa under the roof near the columns. So this was a part of a architectural design of a famous Athenian forum or Athenian market. And the first philosophers belonging to this Stoic school were gathering in this, how to say, corridor or this sort of gallery, and they were talking on different subjects. And the most important of those, or the founder even of this school, was so-called Zeno, Zeno of Kition. He's to be distinguished from other Zeno, of whom we know the paradoxes. Zeno's paradoxes, say Achilles and the turtle and so on. But I think that it is when you just pay attention to these two Zenos, then it will be easier for you to understand the difference between them. So Zeno, who is the author of the paradoxes, lived much earlier, and he belonged to the different school. He belonged to the school of Parmenides. And Zeno of Kition didn't belong to any school. He was better the founder of the school. And this school was called Stoicism from this name of this architecture detail or architectural design, which is called stoa. Now, of course, we have in different languages, in Russian also, we have this adjective stoic, which means patient, forbearing, sometimes It's a synonym of how to say, hard character, forbearance, long suffering, and even fortitude. So when somebody says this is stoic attitudes towards life, means that a person does not easily gets upset. He takes always all things calmly, and he is equally undisturbed in the times of pleasure and in the times of sorrow. So that's what maybe the general features of this stoic attitudes towards life. So I think you are using it sometimes. A positive thinker, a stoic. Yes, of course he's positive because he's a little bit pessimistic, because he understands that fate is fate. You understand, you cannot do anything with it. So according to the major representative of the Roman Stoic school, Seneca, fate leads those who are obedient and pulls those who are inobedient. Okay, so if you are obedient, your fate will lead you. If you are inobedient, your fate will drag you or pull you. Okay, you understand, like a tractor. So because in Latin it was originally said in Latin, fata ducunt, volentes ducunt, nolentes trahunt. So trahere is to pull something. Fata, it's a plural of fate, fatum in Latin. Volentes means those who want. Volentes ducunt. Ducunt, you understand? Ducere, ducunt. So nolentes trahunt. So okay, so this is the essence of Stoicism. Now, I already mentioned, I've already told you that this idea of fate leads to the idea of natural law. So natural law acts exactly in the same way. So it doesn't ask, well, the subject or the thing whether it wants to obey to it or not. If you are heavy, then you will necessarily fall to the earth from the, say, from the high building. If you are just, it's an accident, so you will necessarily fall, and accelerating your fall and gathers just speed, and the consequences will be heavy. And this is not because the law doesn't have pity on anybody. So all you can do is that understand this law, understand how it acts, and conform your life accordingly. Okay, so if you don't want to have complications, if you don't want to suffer, you should understand the logic of these how to say, inescapable laws. Okay, so I think in natural science it is one of the most important notions, the notion of law of nature, a law of nature. So law of nature can be sort of understood in terms of this fate which Stoics proclaimed. Now a few words about the development of this school. The most important representatives of this school in ancient Greece, because it was born in ancient Greece, are Chrysippus, this letter Y should be just a moment. Chrysippus and Cleanthes. Well, maybe I'm not pronouncing them correctly in the English way as they should be pronounced, but it seems that I'm writing them correctly, so you can easily find the exact pronunciation. So in Greek and in Latin, they are pronounced more or less like they are written. So in Russian also we say Chrysipp. Maybe the Greeks also. Chrysa, Chrys is it means gold, and Epos means a horse. So was the golden horse, we can translate his surname. Cleanthes, I'm not I cannot say what it means in Greek, but I will tell you a few words about them. Especially Cleanthes, he's famous for his hymn to Zeus, the great god of the Greek. Well, Zeus was not exactly God in, say, Christian or Muslim perspective. He was the father of gods, or even the elder brother of other gods. But he was the chairman of the Olympic sessions when, according to Homer, when the gods gathered in Olympus mountain in Greece for a session, for a feast, for recreation, it was Zeus who was like leading the choir or taking well, the first word, you understand. So he was the leader of all others, so others sort of obeyed him. And some gods were sons of Zeus. I think one of these sons was Apollo, the god of wisdom. So you understand that. But if we read this hymn to Zeus of Cleanthes, we will easily see that Zeus is not just first between equals, but an exceptional personality. So when it was translated in many languages, into Chinese also. But when it was translated into Russian by Russian poet Derzhavin, it was in the end of the Derzhavin, I think like that. Derzhavin. Well, I'm sure that I'm almost can bet that this surname is new to you. But Russians know Derzhavin because he's a great poet of the 18th century, the age of Catherine the Great. And and he sort of translated this hymn of Zeus into Russian and named it Bog. In Russian, Bog means God, Bog. You understand? Bog. Bhaga, Bhagwan. You understand? Bog, yes? Some of you are Indians, yes? Bhagwan.
Yeah, Bhagwan is God, yeah.
Yes.
Quite similar.
Yes, we are, you understand, we are Indo-Europeans, all of us, Russians not accepted. And for example, if you say Agni, we say огонь, and the Latins say ignis. So all these words are similar. You see, Russian огонь, Indian Agni, and Latin ignis. Well, you know the English word to ignite. Ignite, yes, to make fire, okay, to ignite. So ignite comes from ignis. Am I pronouncing correctly, ignite, or just Winnie? You know this ignite?
Yes, you are.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So just to make sure that Bog is just common notion for Slavs and for Indians and Persians also. Well, this ode. So what is the difference again between Zeus and Bog? Well, in Russia, especially in Christian Russia, in the atmosphere of the dominance of Christian religion, of course, God, the word Bog or God was understood as the supreme ruler, author, creator of the universe. So, but when translating this stoic hymn to Zeus, Derzhavin had no difficulties into transforming this stoic idea of Zeus into Christian idea of God. So it's sometimes even Stoics are called the philosophical predecessors of Christianity because they formulated many notions which made it easier for Romans to accept Christianity. Okay, for example, fate can be understood in terms of the cross, fate and cross. What is a cross? In literally, it's just a figure, like we say, crossroads, for example. Yes, so this just intersection of two bricks. Later, it was used as a how to say, as an instrument of torture in Roman Empire. And according to Christian ideas, Jesus Christ was nailed to a cross. But also Jesus Christ is attributed these words that you should take your cross and follow him. So what is taking your cross? It means accepting your fate. So you understand that later fate and cross in European languages were understood in maybe, well, more or less in the same way, okay? So if you are stoic, if your attitude towards life is stoic, then you accept your fate, and then you just bear your cross, okay? Bearing a cross, okay? So there are some people from Nigeria, so I think they understand what I'm speaking about. Bearing of a cross.
Yes, we do, bro.
Yes, cross. Yes. So, well, this is like a certain bridge between Stoic philosophy and Christian philosophy. Okay. So, well, now, of course, in this polycultural world, this is maybe curious, but of limited importance. What is important is what I've already underlined, is that this idea of fate transferred or changed into the idea of natural law. This is what I think most important for us. But still, I think it's curious that there are some similarities between Stoic philosophy and Christianity, also with Islam, because Islam also has this idea of fate, like the will of Allah. Okay, so this is what to be taken without any reservations. Okay, the will of God, the will of Allah. Okay, if there are some Muslims listening to me, they will understand it. Well, I don't want to create tensions and differences, but better create tolerance and understanding that we are essentially speaking mostly of the same things. Now, what about Roman Stoicism? Because it is much more, which it was much more influential than the Greek one. Among the Roman Stoics, I can enumerate Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Well, it is interesting that they were of different social status. Aurelius. Well, for example, Seneca belonged to Roman nobility, middle class. He was from the family of knights, or how to say, horsemen. Well, more or less, it can be compared with Kshatriya in India. Epictetus was just a slave, and so his social status was one of minimal, one of the lowest possible. He was just a slave. And Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor. So you see the difference. So a Stoic philosophy was appealing to different people. So from slaves to emperors. Now, first we'll start from Seneca. Seneca was very influential, and he had many friends, and he even was the tutor of future Emperor Nero. You remember, perhaps, Nero is just name, well, famous for his cruelty and his, well, like Caligula also. These two emperors, Caligula and Nero, were just very much known, were famous for their cruelty and their, how to say, erratic behavior, okay? Unpredictable erratic behavior. Maybe they were mad, both of them, but at that time there were no psychiatrists to give them appropriate diagnosis. And because they were emperors, so equal to gods, so nobody could charge them with some crimes. Only afterwards, when they died, Caligula and Nero, the Roman historian Tacitus wrote bitter words about their cruelty and about their excesses and about their misbehavior and misleading the whole Roman Empire, leading it to a crisis from which it was like taken or put out by more noble, more deserving of its name emperors like Trajan, for example. Well, you understand all these names are not very important, but if you are interested in Roman history, then you, of course, know these names. I mean, Trajan, Nero, Caligula, they are, Trajan is a positive figure, emperor who was prudent and like full of empathy towards people, and Caligula and Nero were cruel men and maniacs and sadistic, maybe, if we can use this word, because it was, yes, sadistic comes from Marquis de Sade, who lived in the 18th century. So I don't understand how it can be transferred to the realities of the first century, after Christ. Well, but still, here we are. So Seneca was the tutor of Nero, but it is irony of fate that Nero suggested Seneca to commit suicide, because Seneca was accused of conspiring against Nero. So he was accused of political crime, of political disobedience, and Nero, out of respect towards his former teacher, he said, I will not just execute you, but better commit suicide yourself. So then Seneca said, perhaps this will be the last lesson which I'm giving to my former pupil. Let him understand that I'm not that I'm not afraid to die, that I have a clear conscience, and so I will commit suicide, because I think perhaps this is the will of fate. So, well, you understand that this perhaps is the difference between Christians and Stoics, because Christians, I think, and Muslims also, they do not, they are against suicide. They say that suicide is immoral because it's like a defy or challenge to the will of God, okay? But with Stoics, it was not so. Stoics considered that, with Romans in general also, that Stoics considered that there are circumstances in which suicide is normal and even praiseworthy. So that's why Seneca did not object and readily committed suicide. We have a legacy, many letters and treatises written by Seneca. For example, also natural questions, or questiones naturales, natural questions. Well, natural or pertaining to nature. Well, I'm giving my translation, but natural questions or questions about nature. In Latin original, there are questiones naturales. Well, I'm not, you are not obliged to know Latin. I don't know whether Latin is taught to everybody. Maybe in Nigeria you have some essentials of Latin. I'm not sure, but I'm afraid in India Latin is not in the school program. Or Jaswini, I'm right or not?
So can you repeat? Latin is not?
Latin language, is it in your school curriculum or not? Latin language. Latin.
No, sir. No, maybe in very private schools, maybe there is an option to study Latin otherwise, but not like that.
Yes,
it's not regular.
So, but you understand, questiones naturales, it looks like natural questions. Okay? So the roots are the same. So I think that it's not difficult for you to understand this simple, but it will just give you the sense of how to say, you know, this, you will understand that it is sort of, you are going to the bottom of the things. Not in the Nigeria curriculum, maybe in church schools, if you study in the seminary to become a Catholic priest, then perhaps you can have some essentials of Latin. But if you choose this career of a Catholic priest, then you are not taking this scientific career. So I think it sort of excludes each other. So that's why I think that, well, I will not just stress too much this Latin language. For me, it's a pleasure. I love Latin, and I translated something from Latin into Russian. Yes. These natural questions, what is interesting there? First of all is this Seneca's optimism, that his insistence that the progress of science will make the progress of science will lead eventually to important discoveries, and people who are at his time sort of ignorant of many things will in the future know much more. So his attitude towards science is optimistic, but unfortunately Seneca didn't have the means and the time and the necessary perhaps instruments to develop science, to make some scientific discoveries. So his attitude was more or less, well, I would say, a person who dreams, or utopian, okay? You understand, utopian. So he was dreaming of a future in which scientific discoveries will eventually be made. And I think the time has proved or proven that he was right. 2,000 years have passed because Seneca lived in the 1st century AD or Christian era, and now we're living in the 21st century. And so these 2,000 years proved that Seneca was right, that people did make significant progress in science. And I think Stoics, with their philosophy, with their attitude towards life, did make a certain contribution to this, I would say, progress. Because I think that every intelligent man and a scientist also should develop within himself some of these Stoic virtues, okay? Understand what is this fate, what is bearing a cross, what is patience, and what is modesty, and what is obedience, okay? You know, obedience. Well, obedience not, of course, to just blind obedience, but obedience to the will of fate, okay? So obedience to natural law or moral law, because from this idea of fate, there comes two notions. First of all, natural law, which I already mentioned, but also moral law. And this was the thing that Stoics stressed much, moral law. So moral behavior. You know that scientists do have their moral codex of behavior. They called Kudos after Robert Merton, Kudos. So it means communalism, universalism, disinterestedness, and organized skepticism. So these are the moral law of Robert Merton, the great American ethic thinker, Robert Merton. Well, you see, just it's maybe it's curious. Maybe somebody know about him. Well, now we have to finish this conference and start another one. So I'm waiting for you. Born a slave or made a slave just because of the consequences of some war, or being born a slave, can develop unusual abilities and even genius, show his genius. And this is because is this class recorded? Yes, it is, Cynthia. So I think Ojaswini will give you.
Yeah, I'll send you the recording after the class.
Yes, very good. Thank you. So on his thoughts, yes, that's good because Epictetus is you know, being a slave, he is like, you know, that's in Chinese, there's a notion that Tao is compared with an ocean, because the ocean is lowest of, and that is why all the rivers flow into it. Sometimes you should be low, you understand, low, in order to be understood by everybody. Also sort of humiliate yourself in order to be that others can have easy access to you. Otherwise, if you are proud, if you are just speaking from the mountain like God Shiva, people will just be a bit afraid of you, but you cannot have this easy contact with people. So better be humble. So Epictetus was humble because he understood what is humility, but he had his own sense of also of pride, and can be shown by his famous dictum. Well, there's a this is a, you understand what is a nightcap? Nightcap. Well, at that time, because there were no toilets, so nightcap was necessary just to do, you understand, defecation and something like that. So usually the slaves were obliged to just take this night cup and well, sort of evacuate the contents of it into a certain ditch or something like that. But Epictetus said, of course you can obey if your master tells you just take my night cup and just make it void, okay? But also you can disobey. In this case, you will be flogged, you understand? If you disobey your master, you will be flogged. You understand what is flog? To be flogged, no?
Yes,
Flog.
sir.
Yes. So, but you can choose. If you have enough fortitude, enough will, you can forbear the flogging, but deny to just deal with this night cup of your master. Okay, so what a prudent master will do? A prudent master will say, well, this slave is too sort of disobedient and he has a character. I will ask some other slave to do this favor for me. Okay, if your master is of having bad temper, he can be angry with this disobedient slave and can make him a good flogging. Okay, but he will not kill him, because to kill a slave is just imprudent thing to do, because slaves are worth money. Okay, so you are just sort of punishing yourself if you will be killing your own slaves. So after a flogging, I think things will be arranged that next time this master would call some other slave to do this job. Okay, so from this little episode, which Epictetus describes as a, say, as an example how man can choose between two alternatives, you can see that perhaps he himself suffered this well, humiliation and being sensitive, because he was a kind of a genius, which can be easily seen from his works. You can understand what a drama he had to live through while being a slave. Eventually, his master, who was a friend of Nero, the Emperor Nero, of whom I spoke in my previous, in the first part of this lecture, Nero was persecuted by there was some mutiny in his army, and Nero was sort of driven to well, he was sort of there was a certain coup, you understand, coup, and another person proclaimed himself an emperor. So Nero has no other choice than to commit suicide. But Nero was afraid to commit suicide, so he asked Epaphroditus, the master of Epictetus, to kill him. Well, later from this followed the execution of Epaphroditus himself. So, because to kill an emperor is a crime, because every Roman emperor is kind of a god. So that's why if you even the emperor himself asks you to kill him, nevertheless, if you kill him, if you are really are obey your emperor and kill him, you are still considered just committing a great crime, and you will be also punished by execution. So eventually this master of Epictetus was executed, and so Epictetus received his freedom. So later years of his life, he was free. And even he had powerful patrons among Roman officials. And he spent the end of his life somewhere in Greece, in Nicopolis. Well, you can, all these details are very much known. And he spoke and taught in Greek, but he never wrote. So this official, Roman official, a consul, he arranged that his talks were sort of put on paper, and that's how they survived. They are so-called discourses, and discourses, and also there's a there are two works, which one of them is called Discourses, another is called I think Enchiridion, which is well, just well, it is not important. Well, and my memory can lead me astray. So I think what is important is that his dictums are very like hitting the core of things. For example, I will give only two examples. In order to be good, you should understand that you are bad. This is a paradox. Nobody can be good if you want to be good, first thing you should understand that you are bad. Okay? It's a paradox, yes? If you want to be good, you should first understand that you are bad. Well, another paradox is grammar teaches you how to write a letter, but to write a letter or not to write a letter, this grammar doesn't teach you. Okay? So it's not grammar. Grammar just if you want to write a good letter or credential letter or a letter of, you know, if you are seeking a job, you are writing an application. So if grammar helps you to write a good application without grammatical mistake. Also, Word, if you have Word, you have an editor who can help you to write without mistakes. But to write or not to write the application, this grammar doesn't teach you. You should find this science elsewhere, not in grammar. And this science is philosophy. So philosophy teaches you how to behave. And all other sciences like physics, mathematics, and grammar, and law, they are helping you if you are already chosen your way of behavior. But the choice is not there. Physics, mathematics, for example, you can become a student of MIPT, Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology. So, but you are making this choice. I will be a physicist. Who is making the choice? Physics cannot help you to make this choice because physics teaches you about quite other things, not about making choices. If it comes to making choices, you should find some other science that helps you to make the right choice. Or, for example, if you are sort of a man proposes to you, I'm just now addressing the women who are listening to me. If a man proposes to you, you can say yes or no, and there's no, and physics will not help you in this situation. Physics will not help you. Mathematics will not help you. Okay, only philosophy or intuition can help you, but not formal sciences. So Epictetus is keen in forming this intuition, or like broadening your consciousness, or also educating you in different aspects of life. So, and he can also heal. I mean, healing, you understand? Healing. Because philosophy sometimes comforts man, he is healing him. And I know about American prisoner in Vietnam who remained was very comforted in a Vietnamese prison by reading Epictetus. And later, when he was released eventually, he wrote memoirs of his stay in Vietnam, and he described the positive influence that reading of Epictetus had on him. I don't know how he got this book from, how maybe the Vietnamese gave him his book or elsewhere, maybe through Red Cross. I don't know how he got this book, but it was with him in prison and it greatly comforted him. So Epictetus works. Now a few words which we have a few minutes more. We'll speak about Marcus Aurelius. It was in Rome. This, and the Italians call it not Capitol but Campidoglio. But if you mount this hill, which is now just a many steps, many steps of a big stair, you will find the equestrial statue of Marcus Aurelius. Well, you can see it in Wikipedia article on Marcus Aurelius. Usually it's illustrated with this statue. And he was reigning in the second half of the second century AD. AD or Christian era. Well, you know AD, Anno Domini, it's Latin, but we now prefer to say it's Christian era, CE, yes? Well, whatever you like. So second century, and when he the book he wrote it himself. Epictetus didn't write anything. Somebody just put on paper his oral discourses. But with Marcus Aurelius, it was like a personal diary, and it was called in Greek is avton, which means to myself. Well, just in English, to myself. So he didn't write it to anybody else. So myself, to myself. So he didn't write it to anybody else. He didn't think of world fame. Just while performing his duties of an emperor and he lived most of his time outside Rome in military camps somewhere near present Austria. And so in Vienna, in the capital of Austria, you can find the monument to Marcus Aurelius and also the street named after Marcus Aurelius, because he spent most of his time somewhere in the vicinity of modern city of Vienna or Wien, whatever you like. Vienna, Austria, yeah, the capital of Austria. So Austria, Austrian Republic, yeah. Okay, just maybe he was sort of comforting himself, and he wrote this. Interesting that Epictetus also taught in Greek. So the original of Epictetus' writings are in Greek, in Latin. And Aurelius, notwithstanding his being a Roman emperor, he knew Greek very well, and he wrote this personal diary in Greek. So the original is in Greek. Well, you can be maybe a little bit shocked why a Roman emperor practices Greek language, the language of the defeated nations, because Romans defeated Greeks. Well, I could say that in spite of conquering Greece, Romans had a great admiration towards Greek culture, and they understood the good sides of the Greek language, and also it was like a quality of excellence that you master two languages, that you don't only speak and write Latin, but also you can speak and write Greek. So this is like well, for example, in India, educated Indians knew Persian language or Farsi. And so, for example, the great book called Upanishadi was translated into Farsi, and then it was translated from Farsi to Latin. And in this way, in Latin translation, it was used by famous German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. So you see, Farsi was the language of educated people in India. So Indians were bilingual, okay, educated Indians in the 18th century. In the 19th century, because of British occupation and British colonial rule, Farsi sort of came out of use, and now the majority of Indians are bilingual. They know English and Hindi, or English and Malayalam, or Bengalian language, I don't know, Urdu. So it depends in which state of India you live, but this you are not amazed at being bilingual. Also me, I am Russian, but I am giving lecture in English, so I'm also bilingual, okay? So I can understand all the challenges of this situation, but also all the good points in this situation, that you are sort of not understood by people whom you don't want to be understood by, okay? So you are quite living like a second life under a certain mask. You understand? If you switch to the language which some people do not know, then you are in a certain privileged position, okay? Well, I don't know what was the real cause of this choice, but what I know and what we all know is that Marcus Aurelius wrote his diary in Greek. Well, he also mentions Epictetus, and he praises his philosophy, and notwithstanding that Epictetus was a slave, and Marcus Aurelius himself was a son of an emperor and an emperor. So these social differences didn't play a great role, you understand. Maybe for Indian people it may seem curious, because you have a caste system which denies the members of the lower castes the access to knowledge. For example, Shudra is punished if he wants to become to get access to the knowledge which only Brahmins have right to, okay? So, well, maybe now it's different in India. Officially, you don't have this caste system, so in your passports, no mentioning of your caste exists. But informally, as far as I know, the Indians have their, like, descendancies and know what caste they are from. Well, with the Romans, you see this in philosophy, of course. Maybe in private life, of course, it did make a difference whether you are an aristocrat or you are a slave or you are just a plebeian belonging to a simple people, maybe physically free but poor and subject to all kinds of pressure, social pressures. But in philosophy, it seems that it didn't play a great role. When we'll follow this history and philosophy of science, we'll see that many philosophers and many scientists were from every possible strata of the society, so of every possible race, gender, and social social circles, sort of. And we will not pay any attention to it, only in the respect that no one is excluded. I mentioned kudos. Well, kudos, this is universality. So it means that science is open to men of every sex or gender, of every race or nationality, of every culture, of every religion. So and I think is to be compromised by some elitist positions or attitudes. So, and I think the example of Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius sort of living together and in philosophical dictionaries and or encyclopedias, this makes it. We may hope that eventually the culture will succeed over social and other differences. Well, now, well, what is this Stoic attitude to life in Marcus Aurelius? Well, he says that Stoic attitude is peaceful, is not is free of ostentation. What is ostentation? Maybe you don't know this word, ostentation. Jovan, do you know this ostentation? What is that? It's like a show off, okay? Show off. Pretentiousness, yes. And it is interesting that Marcus Aurelius accused Christians of ostentation, that they were so-called Christian martyrs, so people who died for their faith, for their how to say, confession of their faith, confession, you understand, confession. So because at that time Christianity was illicit confession of faith, Christians were sometimes put to prison and tortured and even executed. And Marcus Aurelius, being himself not a cruel man, he wanted to just to charge the blame on Christians themselves, that he didn't want to accuse himself of being cruel to Christians. So he said Christians behave in show ostentation or pretentiousness in their behavior. So they are not stoical. They pretend to be stoical, but they, in fact, they are like hysterical and theatrical, you understand? So that means that he underwent a certain drama in his private consciousness or conscience, well, moral conscience, yes? He understood that perhaps his attitude to Christianity was unjust, but he wanted to blame Christians that they themselves deserve the punishments they get, okay? Because they disobey the laws. Well, this is a tragedy of that this man couldn't understand how to say, the trends of history, and that it will pass a little bit more than 100 years, and his successor, one of the successors, his heir, just not immediate heir, immediate successor, but also Emperor Constantine will change the attitude towards Christianity and eventually make it the state religion, Constantine. So it's interesting that Marcus Aurelius is very skeptical about Christianity, and another emperor who will rule the Roman Empire in the beginning of 4th century will choose Christianity as a state religion. So it is interesting. And it will change, of course, the vector of the development of European culture. Well, what is this then if Christians are accused of being pretentious or insincere or hysterical in their attitude towards death and life? So what is stoical attitude? It's peaceful and devoid of any unnaturalness. So stoic should be first of all natural, like say the change of seasons. Well, now I'm an old man. I'm 63 years old. Don't accuse me of ostentation because I say my age. It's not ostentation. It's just taking it calmly. You are young, most of you. So I am living the autumn of my life, and you are living a spring of your life, okay? So after spring will follow summer, maybe the Nobel Prize for somebody of you, for some of you. But after summer necessarily follows autumn, when even the Nobel Prize sometimes cannot help you. If you are, for example, becoming deficient in your intellectual abilities or having Alzheimer's disease. So you understand, it's all our lot. You understand what is lot? Lot, sort of, yeah, yes, lot. It's
Yes,
just, okay, so lot, this common lot of mankind to become young, to become a grown-up person, to achieve something in life, and then to decay. And also Marcus Aurelius understood that this is normal and you shouldn't be very angry with what is happening with you in your old age, and should be not very proud if you are in full force or in full vigor. So you can, being in summer, you should think about autumn and prepare yourself to autumn. If you are in the spring of your life, also don't forget about autumn and winter also. Also his private life was not very happy. His wife was Faustina, was unfaithful to him, but he also was just patient with her. Only he avoided staying with her and spent most of his time in military camps, far from his wife. And his son, Commodus, who succeeded him on the post of the emperor, was not at all a philosopher. He was like we can say now kickboxer, or at that time he was a gladiator, mostly slaves. But at the time of Marcus Aurelius, they were just what in the French say parkour, you know, parkour. Just this is voluntarily expose yourself to some dangerous situation, okay? So, well, now it is more or less fashionable among young people just to put yourself in some difficult situation and try to escape from it. So at that time, even the son of the emperor sort of preferred to fight with gladiators, and because everybody were watching him, this was a very fashionable performance. And it was told about Commodus that he won more than 1,000 battles. Well, so, but he was no philosopher, and he died miserably. He was killed by assassinators who made a coup attempt, and he was slain by his close friends who turned to be traitors. So, well, it is interesting that he was more lenient to Christians than his father. And he had even, I think, a Christian mistress who always sort of asked him to liberate this or that Christian from captivity, from exile to Sardinia. Sardinia, you know, Sardinia. It's at that time it was the island where there were silver mines, Sardinia, silver mines, and many Christians were sent to Sardinia. And that's the mistress of Commodus, always interceded for those exiles. And sometimes Commodus, who was almost always drunk, subscribed these edicts of liberation of some Christians. Okay, but of course, for his father, if his father saw how his son ruled the empire, he would be shocked. Okay, so this means that Stoic is not exempt from many disillusions and frustrations. Okay, so Stoic is not an ideal, say, ideal husband, an ideal emperor. He's not surrounded by ideal personalities, even within his own family. So the Stoics, as Seneca put it, gold is sort of proved by fire, and good man is proved by miseries. So if you can stand and become a good person even in miseries, then you will prove that you are real. Okay, so this is Stoical attitude. Okay, so well, more or less this is all that I wanted to say about Stoics. What I want to stress is that Stoics influenced also Christianity, Christian philosophy, of which we'll speak later. And also they were forming a certain ethical standards that will be predominant in Christian Europe. And we can speak about Stoic ethics as the ethics of a gentleman, or we can say intelligent man. In Russian we say intelligentsia, or intelligent being more or less equivalent of English word gentleman. You understand? So a person who behaves correctly towards other people and possesses some moral qualities. Okay, well, good moral qualities, not only intelligence. When we say intelligentny in Russian, we don't mean only intelligence, we mean also moral standards, education. We can say educated, well-educated, well-behaving person. Okay, so I think this is due to Stoic philosophy also. Well, thank you for attending my lecture, and I hope Ojaswini will make the film. And yes.
Sir, what?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for hosting us and preparing the Zoom conference. And
No problem, sir.
I'm wishing you good evening and what remains of this evening. I don't know your time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, sir.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Yes.
Thank you, sir.